Today we're going to talk about great white sharks. I've been trying to get Chip Michaelove from Outcast Sport Fishing and Taylor Horton on the podcast for years. We finally have them on. Get ready for an awesome show.
Of swimming out there. And how many times have I reeled in a black tip or a tarpon or a king and a big shark comes up and smokes it right next to the boat? Even a 100-pound black tip getting smoked, that's the size of a person.
When you get out there and experience it, it's unlike anything else. When you're chasing fish and you're out there in God's creation, it's just, sometimes you can't put it into words.
I'm Chip with Outcast Sport Fishing.
I'm Taylor with Salt Creek Outfitters, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
Chip, Taylor, man, I'm so excited to have you guys on the show. I've been really wanting to do this, and luckily for me, we have a little bit of bad weather that puts Chip off the water and gives us the opportunity to do this. So I thank you for doing that on your day off. I know this is your super busy season, the equivalent of our tarpon season in the Florida Keys. But just so everybody knows, Chip has Outcast Sport Fishing out of Hilton Head, South Carolina, and it's one of my favorite social media followings because I think what he does is really cool. He catches giant sharks, and one of those sharks that he catches regularly are great whites. And Taylor has done a documentary type film on Chip and what he's doing, and also on the great white sharks. And it's really, really beautiful. Taylor, where can people find that film?
If you go to YouTube and type in Passion Led Me Here, that's the first documentary we did several years back. And the one that we recently released about Chip is called Ocean's End. You can find both of those on YouTube. You can also go to our Instagram accounts and probably, you find it there as well.
Mine is Outcast Sport Fishing with the, what is that? The underscore, the little line underneath it, Outcast Sport Fishing. And, but I think the documentaries are more on his page, on his YouTube page. I think we, put it on his, and he does all the editing and all the hard work. So, I mean, he needs to get the clicks and all the views. So they're on, what is it? Salt Creek Films or Salt Creek Outfitters, that YouTube page?
Yeah. If you do the at sign Salt Creek Outfitters or at Salt Creek Films, you can find it on either page.
We're going to get into the whole story of what you guys do and everything else. But one of the fun things that we started doing on the podcast, just to kind of get to know the guests a little bit better, for me to get to know you guys a little bit better, and certainly for the audience to get to know you guys a little bit better, is what we're calling the hot seat series of either or questions. Chip, you answer first. Taylor, you answer second, and then I'll move on to the next question. So we'll see how many we can get through. So you guys ready to go for the hot seat?
Let's do it.
All right. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Taylor?
Sunrise.
Coffee, tea, or energy drink?
Tea.
Definitely coffee.
So far, you guys are really on the same page. Cats or dogs?
Cat? Oh, dogs, definitely. I'm thinking sports, but no, definitely dogs.
Dogs. I think they should send every cat to Mars.
Okay. Great white, hammerhead, or tiger?
Oh, there's no question. Great white shark, king. That's the king.
Great whites.
Okay. Android or iPhone?
iPhone, no doubt.
iPhone. Get the AirDrop.
Okay. What tech, with that saying, what tech device do you rely on the most every day?
My phone. Yeah. Pictures, the video, the contacts, all the custom. Yeah. The phone is definitely number one by far.
Taylor?
Yeah, and I'd probably have to say my phone too. I check my emails a lot on there, and whether I want to admit it or not, I'm constantly. I feel like I got to look at it every so often. So
we're all addicted. We're all addicted. All right, Coke or Pepsi?
Coke, definitely. Vanilla Coke is the best, man. It's by far.
Yeah, I'd also agree with Coca-Cola. I love cherry Coke.
Okay. Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
Summer Olympics.
I'd probably say summer too.
Okay. Football or basketball?
Gosh, all right. College is definitely the best. I'm a college basketball fan. So I got to go with. It's hard to go against football, especially this time of year. But yeah, I follow the basketball a little more.
I had a feeling Chip was going to say basketball. He's one of the most loyal Kentucky Wildcats fans I've ever met in my life. He is hardcore. He bleeds blue.
All right.
Not healthy.
I
about you,
definitely
Taylor?
football. I love. I'm glad it's football season, and I enjoy watching football a lot.
All right. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Oh man, gosh, this is a good one. Well, I think it's. I mean, live forever is pretty nice, but or I feel like with all my aching bones and pulled muscles these days, I feel. Oh gosh, man, that's a hard one. How about how about being able to see through the water? I've thought so many times if I could dam Port Royal Sound to drain it to see what's in there, we would see the craziest stuff. So I think X-ray vision would be pretty nice.
Okay. Taylor?
Yeah. Probably it's kind of similar to Chip's. Probably just to be able to figure out tarpon. I'm in the process of trying to figure. They really make my head hurt sometimes, but
Yeah.
I'm addicted. Just being able to figure out how to catch them more frequently.
Yeah, you and me both. Okay, well that leads into the next one. Shark or tarpon?
Sharks, but tarpon is close.
Mm-hmm.
It's close, but yeah, for me it's sharks.
Yeah, that's a hard one for me because I would have normally said redfish or tarpon or something like that, but until I met Chip, when I first went out with him and saw a great white, it messed me up. And I'd have to say great white.
Okay. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
Dinner.
Okay. Office, Friends, or Parks and Rec?
Office. I mean, man, Dwight is it. Dwight is the man. There's no question.
The Office, for sure.
Okay. Mountains or beaches?
I tell you, definitely, mountains for me. I love going up to the mountains where there's no humidity. It's cold. It's a good getaway. So yeah, I like the mountains.
I'd say the beach.
Okay. Shop local or Amazon?
Oh man, that's a good one. I'm supposed to say local, but gosh, living in this area, we don't. Yeah, I'll go with local. Go with that.
Local.
Fly or drive? Drive, without a doubt. I'm not a flyer. I'm scared to death, so I definitely drive. I was thinking about going to Colorado in a couple of weeks when I have some time off, and I'm going to drive. I was looking it up; it's 21 hours, so
yeah,
I'm going to make the trek.
Probably say fly.
Okay.
Yep.
Morning person or night owl?
Night owl, definitely. I hate the mornings, even this time of year. Definitely night.
Mornings.
Okay, and the last question. When it comes to sharks, would you rather be in the water or above the water?
Oh, above the water. I'm scared to death of the water. Tell everybody, if the boat sank, I will die of a heart attack before anybody comes and rescues us. And I'm not lying. Like, I'm literally scared to death of swimming out there. And how many times have I reeled in a black tip or a tarpon or a king and a big shark comes up and smokes it right next to the boat? Even a 100-pound black tip getting smoked, that's the size of a person. I'm sorry, I can keep rambling on, but there's no doubt. Definitely on top of the water.
Yeah, definitely on top.
On
kind of
top?
like what Chip was saying, the black tips. I'm more scared of those than anything else.
No kidding.
Mhm.
In your area, that's the one that I put that in there because I saw you, Taylor, in some of the pictures, and you're in the water with a hooked great white, and or that's what it appears to be. But I was kind of thinking that maybe you would have a difference of opinion of whether you wanted to be in the water or above the water, because a lot of charter fishermen I know, the more time they spend fishing, the less time they want to get in the water. And then there are these others that like both or prefer to be in the water rather than above the water. But I just kind of wonder where you sat on that one, especially for what you guys are doing. I think when I look at the pictures, I think if I was in your shoes, I'd want to be above the water too. All right, so that's pretty cool. For a lot of those questions, you guys are on the same page, but on others, you're not. So when you're not on the same page, how do you guys get together originally to start doing these documentaries and start fishing together and hanging out and creating all the stuff that you've been able to do?
So I started catching these white sharks, and my footage was terrible. It was absolutely it was my footage is pretty awful. And I don't know what, but I was clicking around through YouTube one night looking at some videos, and one of his popped up, it said Salt Creek Films or Outfitters or Salt Creek something, and I clicked on it, and it was the most amazing video, and it was like a redfish. I mean, which is nice, but it's not like, it's not like we're catching. The film was about anything really crazy. It was about a redfish, and it was wild. It's like he was slow motion. The drips coming off the chin, and the music is playing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like an emotional video. And the footage is ridiculous. He's got the drone up with the boat going through the grass. And I'm like, man, this is the best video I've ever seen. And I looked it up. I'm like, man, he's definitely the best I've seen. And I've watched, quite a few fishing videos. And then a week later, like out of the blue, he calls me up and says, hey, my name's Taylor. I'm with Salt Creek, and I would love to do a documentary. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just watching your videos. And I tell you, Tom, I'm really weird about who I take on these white shark trips. Like I've had a lot of awesome opportunities to take some pretty cool people out, but I'm really weird on who I take, because once you go with me once, the gig's up. You know exactly how to do it, where to go, and everything. And it can be duplicated in Georgia, Florida, North Carolina. And so once you go once, so I'm really weird on who I take. And so when Taylor called, he's like, well, hey, let's meet. And as soon as I said, come on down to the marina. And it was right when I met him, I was like, all right, this guy, I can trust this guy with my life. Like this guy is like, so this guy's as trustworthy as it gets. And he was so adamant about gaining my trust. After I talked to him for about a week, he calls me back and he says, would you mind if I signed a contract? I'd feel more confident if I signed a contract. That way, when people ask me, I can say, I can't talk about it. I can't. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So, gave him a contract. He signs a non-disclosure, and man, and he's been not only a great photographer, but he's a great deckhand on the boat, going with me so many times, so many years. He knows exactly now, what I want here and there, and it's he's good. I can cut him loose on the boat to move stuff around and drive the boat and leader fish. There's many times where I've had to put him on the rod and say, hey, listen, my guy's too worn down. Let's, and so Taylor's taken over a couple times, and then so when his documentary came out, yeah, first of all, I could just rattle on and on about some of the work he's done, but and then when the documentary came out, I was pretty nervous about it, because I mean, not every day I'm smiling. He's seen me at my worst when I'm mad as hell. We waited all day long for a fish. We finally hook up and we lose them, and I'm mad as a hornet. And so when the documentary came out, I was thinking, all right, is he going to put some of that in? Is he going to, how's he going to make it look? And he bounced a couple things off, because there was a few things I didn't want in there that show, a few of the tricks that I didn't want going out. So, but other than that, so yeah, he came over, and I had a little gathering with some neighbors and some people in it, and I was blown away, man. I mean, I tell you, it was. He made me look too good. I'm not that good. I was so impressed. I mean, I was in tears through the whole thing, and it kind of, the next few days, I was just like kind of stagnant. It's like, what else can I do? This guy just made a documentary about me catching sharks, and it's crazy. It's way much better than I actually am. And then he wanted to do like a part 2 at Ocean's End. It's called Ocean's End, and that thing was crazy good too. And so yeah, he's been a great asset to join me. And unfortunately, he can't come with me all the time because he's got a full-time job. So he now just joins us on maybe half of them, or 30-40% of the trips. But it's always good to have him on the boat, and because now not only is he the photographer, but he's kind of a deckhand too. He really helps me out. So
I was gonna ask who is taking the photography. So you're also taking the photography and the video, Taylor?
Yeah, but Chip, he takes some some photo too. Don't let him fool you. He gets a lot of good shots too. But we work together to get them, and yeah, we work as a team.
That's so cool. It's so weird how things like that happen. Like Chip, like you were saying that you were looking at his pictures and then he calls you. That is. I can't tell you how many times that happens to me, but it is so weird when it does happen. And then, but I do think that it's like when that does happen, it's like something's telling you like this is your guy right here. Like you were interested in what he was doing. He at the same time he's researching what you're doing, and he reaches out and calls you. That's kind of the way that I did with my my photographer Jason Stemple. I was looking for a photographer. I was checking out his stuff. At the same time he was checking out our stuff, I called him. It was almost the same story, but in reverse. Like I called him and I'm like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" He's like, "Well, I was just watching the show just a little while ago." So it's really cool, and that's turned into a 12 or 13 year relationship that he's my guy. So I think when that stuff happens, go with it, right? Like it's too many weird things to be going on for it not to mean something, or I don't know. Either way,
and he's so good. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right, Chip. I wanted to learn about how you started doing this and how you caught your first great white.
Oh man, how much time do we have?
We got a long time, as much as you want.
I'll give you the quick rundown. So I've always been obsessed with sharks, and then I started running charters in my early 20s. And I was always obsessed though, and I started catching these giants in Port Royal Sound, and I always wanted to catch a great white, even in high school when everybody said we don't have great white sharks down here. So I just kept wanting to do it, and I kept trying, but I wasn't putting that much effort into it. And then I started paying a little bit more attention to people seeing them, and somebody spotted one in North Carolina. I tell you, this is how bad. I found a guy on the website, The Whole Truth, and he was talking about how he would catch them accidentally while fishing for dogfish in Myrtle Beach or North Carolina, commercial gear. And I hunted down his number. I just called him out of the blue and said, "Hey, listen, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm trying to be the first person to ever catch one down here." And so he gave me some ideas, water temperature and the time of year. And then I just started trying a few different areas. And it's kind of funny, man. I had the same couple of guys that would go with me because nobody wanted to go fish for white sharks with me because we never caught any. We're chumming all day long and we didn't catch any. And I was trying all sorts of different methods by trolling, drifting. I was doing all sorts of stuff. And I was losing my mind. And I actually had an idea. I was getting close. I had one day, gosh, I don't know how much I could say on here without getting in trouble, but what I was doing was I was catching these big redfish in near shore, and then I was running them out. I was running them offshore, and I was live baiting. Gosh, I'm just kidding, DNR, right? I'm just doing this for a story. but I was, and there was one day I saw a huge wave coming right at it, and my heart stopped, and it never took it. Now, I don't know if it was a bluefin tuna or if it was a shark. I never saw anything. But at that point, I was like, all right, I think I'm getting close here. And then there was one day I thought maybe I saw a shadow swim under the boat. And then there was one day on January 29th, I guess it will be 9 years ago. I went out, I was by myself, and I had one. I was just talking to my dad, and my dad was even like, he said, "Chip, are you sure? I think you're kind of wasting your time. You're burning a lot of gas, and you could be doing other stuff. And what about T-shirt sales?" And it's like, "No, Dad, I just want something I want to do. And if I get one, it's going to change everything. I mean, it's all I need is one." And that day, man, I had one circle the boat, and it was right after him and I had this conversation, and this thing circling the boat, and Tom, it scared me so bad that I didn't even, I blacked out a little bit. It freaked me out so bad just because nobody'd ever caught one down here. So it's as far as we know, all my knowledge came from Jaws. I mean, that's right. There was nobody I could call and ask. Frank Mundus caught a lot of great whites back in the 70s, but he passed away. So there's nobody I can call. There was a guy in Australia that was real good. He passed. So it was, as far as I know, it's Jaws. This thing's going to jump in the boat and sink me. And by the way, man, we catch some tigers here that are 15, 16, 1,700 pounds. And I've never seen a shark so big where it could eat any tiger shark that I've ever caught. So this thing is swimming around the boat, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's too big. And immediately I think about grabbing my knife, running to the front, and I'm like, I'm going to cut the anchor and get out of here. This thing's too big. This thing could take a motor off my boat. This thing could take my boat down any second.
How big do you think? How big do you think we're talking?
This is where it's kind of, I don't remember it very well because it blacked out. I blacked out. Like, I know it was enormous. So over 2,000 pounds. I mean, it was big.
How many feet would that be?
It was definitely over 15. And a white shark is more wide than it is long. Like, the length of it is always cool, but the width of these sharks are completely different than a bull or a tiger or anything like that. So when it's circling the boat and I'm thinking, I need to get out of here. And then, I was like, you know what? I've waited all my life for this. I've talked about it since high school. And I took my bait and pitched it in over the side, and he didn't want it. He was circling. He was more interested in the boat, and he just kept circling and circling. And I jigged it. I just kind of popped the bait there, and he just came up and inhaled it and swam under and came up the other side about 30 yards away. And his dorsal fin came up and the fin, and he's just sitting there chomping on it. And I'm looking. I'm like, I cannot believe I'm looking at a white shark right now. Like, I cannot believe this is happening. There's nobody here. There's no cameras. Nobody's going to believe me. And then I was like, okay, get ready. And I tightened up, set it, and it just smoked it. Put it in the rod holder, throw the anchor ball, throw it in reverse. And I'm screaming. I mean, I'm in full, like those people that go crazy in church with the tongues, like, blah, 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 blah. I was going nuts. And I'm chasing that thing all day. I called a couple of friends to come help me. Nobody even believed me when I called. And so I fight that thing into the night, and I lost it.
Oh.
And man, it was like winning the lottery, but also like losing the ticket at the same time. And it was so deflating, and it freaked me out really bad. And I'll tell you, Tom, one of the scariest moments was when I went back to pick up my anchor ball, because the old question of whether they're here or not, they're here. And when I reached over for that anchor ball thinking, what just happened here a few hours ago? Oh my gosh. Because you got to think, my mentality is still Jaws. Nobody knows anything about these guys here. So I was scared to death reaching down, getting the anchor ball. I got the anchor, go in, and I was scared to death, man. I was thinking I'll never go out there by myself again. And 3 days later, my best friend, Brian Walsh in Pavel, I've known for years and years. They said, let's go back out there. Let's go. I said, let's do it. And I was like, man, I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm having nightmares. This is really shaking me out. Like this is really bothering me. And so they say, let's go. So 3 days later we go. It's Super Bowl Sunday. The whole world's watching the Super Bowl, and we're out there, and we're not on a wreck. We're not close to, and we put, a couple lines out. And they say, can we go somewhere and let's catch some sea bass or some snapper or something? And I was like, nope, you guys want to see a white shark? We're staying right here. And I didn't think it was going to happen again. And lo and behold, it happened again. And this thing takes the bait, and it's huge. It's even larger than the one before. And we fought that thing till like 11 o'clock at night. And I didn't have the right tackle. Anyway, we fight this thing all night. We're in the ocean by ourselves because it's Super Bowl. Nobody's out there on the ocean in the middle of the night, and especially in the winter. And I lost that one too. And I'll never forget, I threw down my hat. I was so mad. And my buddy Brian looks at me and he goes, don't be mad. You figured it out. You got it. Now you just got to figure out how you're going to stop one of these things. And so then it all started. So, and actually, Tom, I was 0 for 3 before I landed my first one. So I lost my first 3. And then finally on the fourth one, we landed it. I landed it with my buddy Pavel on the boat. And just a quick story. This is great. There's no better motivation when people don't believe you. And this is what really, I took pictures of that white shark, and really good pictures that day. And I posted them on Facebook. I'm like, this is going to go crazy. And the papers called me. The first one that called me was our local paper. And I told them the whole story. I told them how, I sent them a dozen pictures, and they call me back an hour later and say, Chip, are you in any of these pictures? I was like, no, I took them all though. And they said, well, I know I hope this isn't going to be offensive, but this is just really hard to grasp. I mean, it is a great white shark. Nobody's ever caught one anywhere remotely down here. I've called some scientists. They've never caught one around here. And they said it's possible, and so they blatantly said, we're not going to run a story because we don't believe you. And so, I called Pavel and he was like, well, let's do it again. And so I went out again and we got a huge one with a friend of mine, Troy, and I put my hand on the nose of it and it was a big one. It was like a 14 footer. And I posted that. And then next thing I know, it's like USA Today's calling, CNN, Fox, Good Morning America. And it just went, man, it was so crazy. It changed my life. That fish did a lot. And then I slowly got better and better at trying to figure out the right leader system and the tackle and the hook and if I should chase them down or it's completely different than any fish I've ever targeted in my life. So it was like starting over again from scratch.
God, did it give you? And how long had you been charter fishing at this point?
Gosh, I guess maybe, let's see, 15 years, maybe 13,
Wow.
15 years. I was a guide. And, I tell them, I've always been obsessed with sharks. I've got a couple of records here. I was fishing shark tournaments. I'm a bear, that's not something I'm proud of, is killing these things. But back in the day, I was fishing our South Carolina shark tournament and we had awesome success in that. And so, I mean, I was already crazy about sharks. I mean, I love tarpon and king mackerel and fishing for sales and mahi and stuff, but man, the repeat business is from sharks. I mean, it's night and day. If I go out and when I would go offshore and catch 4 or 5, 6 cobia, the people are excited. But you put them on a 12-foot shark, a 12-foot hammerhead, you got them forever. Like they're going to come back to you for the rest of their lives every year, and they're going to talk about it until we get a bigger one. So it's those big sharks are really, it's been a gold mine, man, and it's been great that I'm having fun doing it too. So.
That's really cool, man. That story, so many things in that story kind of reminded me of early days of my guide career, where we'd be out tarpon fishing or whatever, or maybe someplace way out in the Marquesas, you're out there by yourself, and the sharks just come and just like take your tarpon or whatever, and they're just bull sharks everywhere, and they're just doing like the same thing. And when you were talking about that great white on a much smaller scale, when I was a very inexperienced guide and got in a situation like that, I remember just like going over and it was just a overload. And it's like, I'm starting the engine and I'm leaving here because I don't belong here. This place is not for me. Like everything around me is telling me to leave, and I'm going to do that. And even like you go like for 15 minutes and you just like looking over your shoulder, like are they, it's so weird now to think about it, but you're like, are they behind me? Like you're going 40 miles an hour. Like, are they back there? Are they coming? Yes. You know what I'm saying? Like, and and that's kind of how you were feeling with that great white. Like you didn't even want to reach over and grab the anchor ball. Like, what's going to happen? Is it going to leap out of the water like on TV and grab me? Like that is so wild.
It was so crazy. The guy I had on for the second one on Super Bowl Sunday, Brian Walsh. This guy's a fighter pilot. This guy's dropped bombs on people. He's been shot at. He was launching rockets. He's almost died he's Top Gun, man. I've got him on the boat, and we're hooked to this white shark, and it's 9:00 at night. And this thing runs, and then it starts charging the boat, and he completely loses his mind. He's like, Chip, gun it, go, 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 go. It's going to jump the boat. And I'm like, see, now you know what I mean. And then afterwards, we ended up losing that fish. But afterwards, he had some awesome lines. It's always cool getting the perspective of somebody that's raw, that's not in the element, but still is knowledgeable. And he was like, I feel like we're messing with the devil. I feel like we're messing with something we shouldn't be messing with right now. I don't think this is safe. And it just doesn't feel natural at all. And he had some really good lines too about how it's in our DNA to be scared to death of something this huge that hunts people. I mean, you get all these conservationists that say sharks don't eat people. Well, they do. There's plenty of times where they've consumed people. That tiger shark that just consumed that man in Egypt, consumed him. I mean, plenty of times where a white shark, can take somebody's head off, bite somebody in half. So they're they'll take a person down, and these boats that are sinking in the middle of the ocean, they're not drowning. They're in the shark's
Listen, man,
belly.
nothing in the ocean goes to waste. If you spend your life on the ocean, you know that there is nothing that goes to waste. The ocean eats
Yeah,
everything, whether that's
yeah,
an A level predator or it's the tiny little creatures in the ocean. Everything is consumed. Taylor, I'm very interested in this because after hearing that story from Chip, and you see even after all these years, and the emotion that when he starts talking about that first shark, and when you're looking at this as a filmmaker, how do you think that you are going to capture that emotion and capture that scene in a way that it is that the viewer is going to understand the kind of feeling that Chip just described there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Honestly, my job's the easy part. All I have to do is point the camera because um, everything Chip's doing and just the whole experience in itself speaks for itself. Um, Tells a story. And I think kind of going back to Chip's story and his testimony about, he put a lot of time and effort into learning how to do that. And, nobody just goes out there and spends countless hours in the freezing cold weather, year after year after year. Just and especially, I think what's so impressive is the perseverance. Like you really gotta have a lot of passion to be able to continue to go out there and if it's not happening, your natural reaction is to just give up, especially if just it's time after time again, but he just made the decision not to give up. So I think that that's a powerful message right there. He, like you said, he finally, he went out there by himself and he got that one to, the shark found him. The shark finally found him. And that's when it changed. And I think when you just continue to choose to go after something like that and not give up, it's a powerful thing. You can apply that to anything in life. So I think that message right there is kind of what was captured in the documentary, and that speaks for itself. You see Chip's passion, not just for great whites, but just for fishing in general. I mean, I think you can probably relate to it too, Tom. Just when you get out there and experience it, it's unlike anything else. When you're chasing fish and you're out there in God's creation, it's just sometimes you can't put it into words. It just speaks for itself. And just being able to, I feel blessed that Chip allowed me to come out and capture those moments. Like I said, my job was the easy part, just pointing the camera. But the whole experience speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool. One of the things I was just thinking about there is like, Chip was determined that he was going to figure this out. And probably in a lot of ways, you were doing things the wrong way. And if you had continued doing that, you definitely were not going to figure it out. You make some sort of pivot here and there. And whether it's a tarpon or a bonefish or a permit or a redfish or snook or any species that we fish for in the Florida Keys, there has been this moment to where usually by yourself or maybe on a charter, somehow it's kind of accidentally you learn one little thing.
Yep.
That is like a key that unlocks this whole universe of, you were close, but you weren't quite there. And you look at a different area, or you go to a different area to fish for a different fish, and then you find what you're looking for. And it's like, oh, that, to me, that's what fishing is all about. That's what charter fishing is all about, and making your living doing this in a continual learning process. But when I think about what you just described, like what you learned there and the experience that you had there is like the ultimate A predator on the planet. You found it, and then you get there and you're like, oh, I don't even know if I want to have found it. Like that's a cool kind of a perspective that, like, once you find it, you're like, oh damn, maybe I shouldn't have found this. Or
Yeah.
like your friend was saying, it feels like you're messing with the devil. Like
Yeah.
that overall, at this point, do you feel like that now? How has that feeling changed?
It's definitely changed. The more I was with these fish, the more I learned that they're actually really, really intelligent. It's not, I love Jaws, but it's nowhere near the animal that they. It's my favorite movie. It's the best, and it's actually, probably the most realistic shark movie still out, even though it's from the '70s. But these sharks are so intelligent, and they're not going to do anything that's going to harm their eyes, their gills, or put them in harm's way. Like a tiger, a bull, a blacktip, they're kind of loose cannons. They'll come in and crash a bait quick. Well, a white shark comes in, and there's a really big thought process there. They swim up to the boat, they'll circle for half an hour and leave. Sometimes they take the bait, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they realize that something's not right and they disappear. And it makes me wonder how many that I didn't see. How many swam under the boat that I never saw, that just said, you know what, something's not right here, and I'm going to go. I definitely feel a lot more comfortable with them, but I'm still nervous. Like the night before I go, I can't sleep because I know, what am I going to see crazy? Because every time we go out there, especially last winter, we had a really good winter last year where we got one every trip but one.
Whoa.
We had a really good year last year. And it was, you just never know what you're going to see. Like that first big one I ever landed, it was in March. Not the first one, but the first true adult. I jumped completely out of the water. Not half, not 2/3, came completely out of the water, 40 yards behind the boat. I wish I had a camera for this. And it was just me and my friend Troy, came completely out of the water. And it was like a bus the explosion as he hit. And then what's he do? He comes right at the boat. Now, if this shark jumps again and jumps in the boat, he's definitely going to sink the boat. This is a 2,400-pound animal. If he jumps in the boat, my 26-foot boat is not going to hold his weight. So after he jumps, he swims right at us. And I don't even put any pressure on him. I don't want him to panic anymore. He swam right at us, went right under the boat, and then flew out the other side off a corner. And then we put the heat back on him. But it's just like, times like that, all right, like Tom, you're on the water a lot. A friend of mine had a king mackerel jump in his boat not too long ago, just out fishing, just wasn't even hooked. The king mackerel just jumped right in the boat. Another guy had a tarpon jump in the boat. If you go out there enough, crazy things happen. Now, the odds of a white shark jumping in the boat are extremely remote because now I know what they're going to do. I know they're going to take the bait, and I'm going to apply the heat when they get a little further down. But if they go straight down, I'm a little nervous. Right at first initial hit. If they go straight down, I don't want them to panic anymore because I don't want them to go straight up. I had one, the biggest male. I think the guys up in Cape Cod may have it now, but they're about 5 years ago. We tagged the largest male ever in the Atlantic. It was like 2,500 pounds, 15-footer. Put a satellite tag on it. But at that point, it swam down, it darted down, and then when it came up, he hit the bottom of the boat, and he lifted the boat up just a little bit out of the water, a few inches.
Whoa.
And it actually didn't scare me that bad, but it just like, he just ran straight into the boat, going straight up. And it's a very, but prior to being hooked, extremely intelligent fish. It's the smartest fish in the ocean. It's the only fish I've ever seen where it takes the bait and it'll smoke at 200 yards, and then he'll spin around and come at you just chomping on the leader. Like he knows he's hooked, like a dog when you pull on its tail, and he comes around and starts chomping. Where these other fish, like a tarpon, a tiger shark, a king mackerel, anything, they just go, and he's just going to burn out all his energy. Where that white shark doesn't. He knows what's going on. Man, we hooked a huge one last January, and it was the biggest one I hooked last year, and we lost it. And it started doing these weird barrel rolls right in the middle of the fight. Not at the beginning, not at the end, in the middle of the fight. It just starts barrel rolling out there, and he starts getting real tangled up in the leader. And we ended up losing that one. And it's just, man, they're extremely erratic, but they're so smart. I've never seen a fish where I'm chumming hard enough to. My chum line's got to be 4 or 5 miles, and this thing comes in from miles away, and he's swimming right in it, and he leaves. He doesn't take the bait. He leaves. That blows my mind. That tells me they know when something's up. When something's not right, they're just going to move on and not be that crazy maniac you see on TV, or that fish that we know from cobia fishing or king mackerel fishing or whatever. So I learned a lot about these animals. But yeah, to get back to your question, am I nervous? I'm not nervous like I was, but it definitely gets the hair on my neck standing up, man. Just knowing what we could see. And we had a dead whale a few years ago off South Carolina, and man, that was like, it's in his Ocean's End the documentary, and I just couldn't believe what we were seeing. I mean, we were just seeing these sharks swarm this whale, and it was a dream come true. It was just, but that really helped me out a lot too, because I tell you, man, that gave me such an edge watching those fish swim around this thing all day and seeing what they like, what they don't like, how they react. And I'm throwing a couple baits to them, and I started noticing what they liked and what they didn't like. They definitely don't want to risk anything. They don't want to risk their eyes. They don't want to, but they also, they also don't want to work hard for it. They just don't want to expend much energy. They definitely don't want to chase stuff. I mean, it was fascinating spending. We spent 4 days with that whale watching the show, and it was just as much as you wanted. We ended up just watching more than hooking, because figure we can hook white sharks whenever we want, but just to watch the mayhem of these white sharks just destroying this right whale was just, it was wild. And I had this one sign to say, why aren't you tagging? Why aren't you hooking these things? And I was like, man, you don't understand. It's so cool. I remember the first one we hooked off that whale, it dragged us probably 400 yards off the whale. And I look back at the whale and I see like grenades going off. I see bombs going off all over the whale. I'm like, man, we're missing the show. We got to get back over there and see what's going on. Let's hurry up, put a tag in this thing and get back. And so it was just, man, it's just a dream come true with that thing.
That's super cool. I mean, wow. Taylor, what's been the most challenging part about getting this footage? And I see you getting in the water. How often are you doing that?
That was a one and done thing.
You got it twice. Don't let him lie to you. You got it twice.
Don't tell my mama. She was the one that told me I can never get back in the water again. But yeah, the most challenging thing, I would definitely have to say, behind the camera, Chip was talking about when the sharks do go airborne and they breach. It's hard to figure out what's in focus and what's not. You're looking on a flat line, and I shoot with DSLRs, so camera lenses on there. So manual focus, I don't use the autofocus. I use manual. You don't know exactly what's in focus and what's not. So a lot of times when they would come up on top, might be just slightly out of focus, and then by the time you get on them, they go back down. So I'd say there's a number of times I can think back when we were on that whale that Chip was talking about. I think it was that same shark. He put on a show, and there was one time he went completely out of the water, and I was just a hair off on the focus. And when I went back and looked at the footage, I was just like, oh no, so that was probably from the camera standpoint, that was one of the more challenging things.
Yeah. Yeah, and so probably one of the more disappointing ones. So I got so many other questions about this, but what about one of the things that I was wondering, and I know other people are going to wonder about it, is like, what's the legality of catching great whites or targeting great whites, and then when you're tagging them, like what is that with some sort of organization, and if so, where's that information going, and what are they doing with it?
So Tom, I'm going to be dead honest here. So when I first started, I was trying to catch them there, and when I hooked my first one, the paper ran a story, and I had to lie and say that I'm fishing for sharks. I just happened to catch a great white shark, highly protected species, and then after I caught one, I had a scientist from Cape Cod reach out and ask me a lot of questions about it, and I didn't want to disclose what I was doing or too much of it. And then after I got the second one, he's like, okay, here's the deal. We have no data of anything in South Carolina. We have nothing. Nobody's catching these things down there. We'll put you on our permit if you put out our tags. You want it? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, an awesome opportunity. I'm going to work with these scientists. And then I have a legit, I can target these things. I can handle these things, and I don't have to run around and man, it got so crazy down here. I'm not exaggerating. I counted. After I got my first one, I got stopped by DNR law enforcement 11 times. 11 straight trips I got stopped. And it was it was crazy. I was thinking, all right, are they going to get me in Port Royal Sound? Are they going to get me on my way out? Are they going to get me at the dock? Where are the like you get stopped 3 or 4 straight times? Like, all right, this is ridiculous. But 11 straight times I went out, and they didn't know what to do. There's no law down here, so I haven't disclosed if I'm in state waters or federal waters at that point. So they didn't know what to do. So they were just really just going through all my safety gear and looking at what bait I had on the boat, and that's questionable as well, in their eyes. And so I never got a ticket from them. But so I teamed up with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy and also Greg Scommel that works with the state of Massachusetts, and John Chisholm. And John Chisholm, man, he was the first one to reach out and say, hey, listen, he convinced everybody up there, send this guy satellite tags, send this guy acoustic tags, and he can get it done. And then they were like, are you sure, Chip? You think you could grab the fin of one of these sharks and drill a hole and put these things in? I was like, yeah, I can do it. They're like, because up until this point, we thought we had to lift these things out of the water to put a spot satellite tag. I'm like, no, you know what? I can do it over the side of the boat. Are you sure? So they sent me one down to test it. These tags are expensive. Some of these tags are one's $5,000, the other one's $3,000. I'm tying them to my arm to make sure I don't, drop them over the side when we're doing it. And so we put a satellite tag on one. The first one I caught that was satellite tag, we named it Miss Carolina. And man, it was a huge celebration that night. We went out, we definitely had a good time, just because, a lot of people said you can't satellite tag a white shark without hauling it out of the water. And that gets a little questionable because, as you know, big fish, they're not made to be hauled out. You take a 2,000-pound fish and put them on a beach or on a lift, they look like a stick of melted butter. Now, I mean, if they're pregnant, there's no doubt that's messing with the pot. So I won't go down that road, but there's a lot of negative things with hauling a fish out, with the laws too. That's why they don't allow Goliath grouper out of the water, and certain billfish and so forth. So I started, tagging these things. And Tom, it's been such an advantage on the fishing side. I study these things like crazy. I've got 2 books. I've got a book of skunks and a book of catches. Every single time I go out there and get skunked, I come back, I write down water temperature, water clarity, wind direction, current direction, what I use for bait, and what I saw. Did I see jellyfish, birds? What kind of birds? Did I see turtles? Did I see this? I mean, I was really getting a chart down. So I got a book of skunks and a book of catches, and I just kept getting better and better through the years. And then also putting these satellite tags on these sharks, I could see what they were doing, post-release. I could see what their migration was, where they liked hanging out, what they like. And there's been a couple of spots, when I first started catching them, I thought it was just one. I thought it was like, all right, they're just in this one spot. But then as time has gone on, I've tried a few others, and now there's 6, 7, 8 spots that we've had awesome days, like really good days. And I've got, I'm pretty confident now where they are. The first wave that comes down, the second wave, there's definitely a migration that comes down. And then when the migration comes down, then they all scatter out, and then they all start foraging. They all start looking around. So we get it's been awesome, man. Not having a life and not having any kids, not having something that has sidetracked me, it's been kind of beneficial because we've got some really awesome fishermen here in Hilton Head, but they also have kids. They got to go to baseball practice, take their kid to the dentist's office, and I don't have anything. I have no life. So when I get skunked, I come back and I look at the computer and I look at the water temperature, and I'm like, well, and I start thinking I'll never forget. Last year, the time I got skunked, I was so mad because I was really confident. And I came back in, and another captain, Richard, calls me up and he says, Chip, you're not going to believe it, but we had one of your pets circling me today. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, we had a white shark circling me. I was like, where are you? Where'd you go? And I'm like, man, why did I not think of that? And it drove me crazy. And what did I do? I write down the date, the time. I wrote it all down. So now if I see that same frequency, that pattern again, I can maybe go to where he was just out there running a charter. So, see, you can get me going on all this other stuff, but the satellite data is amazing. The scientists love it because they're not capturing them. They're driving up to them and hitting them with a pole that puts an acoustic tag in, where we're capturing where you can take blood, you can put a satellite tag on the dorsal fin that gives their location in real time. So it is different. My way is probably a little rougher on the fish. I mean, of course, it's rougher to catch, but we've never had a fatality, which that's probably one of my most proudest achievements is hooking this many, and we haven't killed one yet. Where other organizations have, and I did a post mortality study with the state on blacktips. We had a couple die. They don't all make it, but the white sharks so far 100%. We're batting 1,000 on those, which is
That's
nice.
awesome. So you were saying about the lift and pulling them out of the water is the way some other people do it, and you're doing it differently. Can you describe what you're doing? Then I was surprised to hear you say that your way was rougher. Like it seems the other way's rougher.
You're right. So you got three main guys. There's the guys out of Cape Cod. They've got a plane up and they spot them and they drive up to them and they pop them with a pole to put an acoustic tag in. Now they're also putting some camera tags on them. They're taking muscle tissue. They're doing some stuff. Then you have I'm not going to mention their name, but then you have another organization that catches them like with hook, like I do, a much bigger hook. And they drag a polyball around and then they bring them to a lift. They lift them out of the water. They pull them out for 15 to 20 minutes. Which is, that's a long time. 3-4 minutes with a fish out of the water is a long time. 15, 20 minutes is, I'm surprised. I'm really surprised. That's a really long time. So they're hauling them out of the water and then they're doing all their stuff to them. They've got a crowd around them working on them and then they lower and then they push the fish off. I'm not a fan of that. I used to fish shark tournaments. I used to kill sharks. I know how to kill them. Unfortunately, I'm not proud of it, but you pull a big shark out of the water and you let them lay on their liver and intestines like that for an amount of time. You can do that up to about 100 pounds, 150. But when you start getting up to, 1,000 pounds, 2,000 pounds, 3,000 pounds, I've seen videos with blood coming out the anus. It's not good. Like I said, I'm proud to say I haven't killed any. And my sharks aren't leaving the area. There's a difference. I've studied their method, just like a book, and I've just looked at. Because I want to capture white sharks. They want to capture white sharks. Everybody wants to catch them, and I'm happy with what I'm doing. I wouldn't change a thing.
You're doing it out of a 26-foot boat.
Yeah.
Sometimes with you and Taylor, or maybe even you and customers. Right. Yeah. So how did you figure out how to handle these things?
It's kind of funny, man. It's working with those big tiger sharks and hammers gave me a heads up, a head start on them. And, it's these tigers, man, are 1,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds, some of them. And that kind of got me a little more experience and edge. And what was, I don't know how much I should say.
Well, you got to say what you're comfortable saying, I don't
throw anybody under the bus, but there's a lot of people that said you can't do it. And as well as I do, Tom, the best motivation in life is when somebody says it can't be done. And I remember I was tagging tiger sharks with O-Search, and I'll never forget, Chris Fisher called me up and he said, and it was right when I started catching great white sharks. And he said, "Hey, you're doing a great job, but I'd like to send my experienced fishermen down there to show you how to handle these things." What do you think I do for a living? You guys fish, 6 weeks a year? I'm on the water every single day doing 2 charters a day. What do you think? How about I show you how to catch these? Next thing I know, they tell me the guy's in the hospital with a wounded arm and he's in for a couple of weeks. And I'm like, well, I've never been in the hospital none of my customers have even been in the hospital for, a wound. So it's kind of funny how, how it's all, it's worked out this way, but it just takes a little bit of experience. I've got a lot of people who, from Florida to North Carolina, have called me, and whether it be charter fishermen or just recreation, and said, "Hey, I want to catch this. What depth are you? How are you doing it? Are you doing this? Are you drifting? What are you using for bait?" And there's no way you can duplicate what the experience needed to land something that large. You can't take a weekend warrior and I know this sounds really arrogant, but it's just like me when hunting. There's no way I could shoot a deer right now. I've seen it done, but there's no way I could go shoot. I know nothing about shooting deer or anything. But you just can't take a weekend warrior and say, "Okay, go throw out a big chunk of something, catch a 2,000-pound white shark. It's not going to happen. That fish is going to go under the motors. He's going to go around the prop. He's going to go around the anchor. The line's going to go up under the boat. What are you going to do in that? I mean, there's so many variables. This fish is not going to act like you want it to. It's not going to stay out on the horizon and come right to you. He's going to give you the most problems you've ever had in your life because he's huge. He's going to go where he wants to go because you can't stop a 2,000-pound fish. When he wants to go, whether it be right under the props or right under the anchor line or off the pulpit, you're going to be presented with a lot of problems that you've never had before. And the tackle too. Like I said, I mean, I think I'm a pretty experienced fisherman, and I lost my first 3. And sharks, I mean, that's what I do. I catch tigers, hammers, bulls, and I was so mad after the second loss. But then to lose a third one, I looked up the sky. I was like, God does not want me to catch a great white shark. And it's just I had to go back to the drawing board and put together just bigger tackle and a whole entirely different setup to stop one of these things. So the interest level of these are. It's been a blast, man. And, it's been so. The only tough thing is our weather. It's rough in the wintertime. So, I mean, we only get one every 7 days, one calm day every 7 or 10 days when they're here. So that presents quite a problem when I have somebody that wants to go or somebody that wants to film. Taylor will tell me, hey, I've got a few days off. And it's like, man, it's blowing 20 knots for the next week and a half, it looks like. And so the weather is a big obstacle as long as, as well with the tackle.
Well, what's interesting too is like, I mean, I agree with you about, I've never even seen a great white personally. That's one of the reasons why it's shrouded in mystery for me. And that makes it even more interesting, like when you probably the same way when you had never seen one, like you're infatuated with it. You want to see one really bad. And then I see the tracks from Search and from everybody else, and it's coming right through the Keys, and it's coming right through where we fish, and it's coming, and it's like, why haven't I seen one? I don't. It seems like I would have seen one, but who knows? Maybe they're under the boat. I don't know. I'm sure they've been around. But when one time we had a particularly problematic hammerhead at the Long Key Bridge, and we went out, and it's funny because I had my dad on the show, and this hammerhead got his tarpon, and the wind started blowing the next day, and we didn't have anything to do except for we're like, well, I guess we could go try to catch that shark. And it's like, well, what would we even use? Like, yeah, so we had to, just like you're talking about, scale up the tackle, get everything ready. And we went out there, and sure enough, I hooked it and was able to catch it. And it was definitely the most challenging fish I had ever caught. Because it was doing things like when it would shake its head, it would go completely slack. And then it would almost jerk you off your feet.
Yes.
And I had never experienced that before. And then you're having a 13.5-foot hammerhead that goes through the bridge and goes over to the bayside and then comes back through the bridge. And so now you're trying to wire this shark that's the biggest thing we've ever hooked. And we're trying to make sure that it and the boat goes through the same span of the bridge, and the current is ripping. And it was just really, really, really challenging. And I remember telling people, they were like, wow, that's cool, you caught that thing. And I was like, yeah, but that is not for the faint of heart. Like, that is not for a client. You wouldn't ever want to take your client to do that, because this was like really advanced and incredible teamwork that had to go on. And I'm imagining that a hammerhead like that is probably cake compared to the great white.
You'd be surprised. It pulls hard, like that hammerhead. It pulls just as hard as a white shark. I mean, those things are, the only thing different is it's not as erratic, but that head shake, it's the same. It'll just pull your spine out. I mean, it'll pull you off the boat. It just, man, it's like whiplash, because they give you hope, and then they just whip you, and it just, man, it's brutal, but it's similar. People ask about it, and I think the closest thing to it is a hammerhead, just because of how a hammer will run, and then they'll come around and come at you. A different thought process, because a hammerhead won't barrel roll and do all this crazy stuff that a white shark will do, but it's close. We got a hammer on Monday that just about killed these people. I mean, it killed me too. I mean, we were battling this thing. It's hot out. I grabbed the leader, and I'm pulling as hard as I can, and I just can't move them. And I was like, I told them, I was like, you guys were asking about a white shark? This is it. This is exactly what it feels like right here. It's they're just, amazing, man. The hammers are so, I love catching hammers here in the summertime, but yeah, the white sharks. And I think the fascination is, it's, Jaws really, I mean, Jaws started it, but it's still the king of the ocean. You're looking at a fish that can get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pounds. I mean, if we catch a hammer over 1,000 pounds, it's like, holy crap, that's a lifetime fish. But 1,000-pound white shark, I mean, it's still a juvenile. I mean, it's still a baby. And it's been such an amazing process, this whole thing about learning about these sharks, because Tom, when I first started fishing for them, I thought there was like one or two. And they would put a receiver down there off of Georgia called Gray's Reef. And they said every year they pick up this one shark that comes through. And I'm like, we got one. And if I go out enough, I'm going to catch him. And I just was thinking, if I go, but who wants to sit out there all winter long? It's 45, 55 degrees out all winter, and you're sitting there watching water go by. But I really did think there was one or two. And now after time has gone by, we have thousands of them out there. We've got so many white sharks swimming off South Carolina, Georgia, Florida in the winter. It blows my mind. This is how many we have. Dr. Scomo has tagged about, I know I'm going to get it wrong, let's say about 220, 240 white sharks. He's tagged with an acoustic tag. I've seen about 100 of them down here, but I've yet to see any of his. So, but 100% of his are coming down here. Not half of them, but 100% of his sharks are swimming in the south. And if I've seen 100 white sharks so far, and I haven't seen it, we've got to have thousands of them. I mean, it's wild. And I tell you, something else I thought was really cool is, that we're taking DNA from these things. And we've learned that through DNA, all these sharks are coming from like a handful of white sharks. They're not coming from 100 of them. They're coming from the same handful of parents that are responsible for all these white sharks down here. How big are these things? How big are these white sharks? They're not coming into the inside of the Gulf Stream. They're out in the middle of the ocean. We don't know where they're breeding. We've got an idea where they're pupping, but it's so fascinating to dive into that of how big is really out there.
So
What's
you're
out there
thinking
200
like
miles?
what you mentioned before was you caught one that was 15 feet long. It was 2,500 pounds. So do we have any idea of the age of that particular fish?
They're guessing around. I don't know that one. I would guess it. I don't know, 30 or 40. I'm ballparking it, but they say these white sharks get up to 70 years old. But also, Tom, like we don't know what's out there past the ledge. Like all these white sharks we catch are from the Gulf Stream on. All the satellite tags I put out, they're going up and down the coast, but they will not go outside that Gulf Stream ledge.
Wow.
They won't go out there, and I think they won't go out there because of fear. I think they're scared of being eaten. Because
is it possible that inside the ledge and what we're catching and the things that you're describing is the size of a bus and that scared you so bad you had nightmares, that you're actually just fishing in the nursery and that there's megalodon? I mean, you hear about megalodon, but maybe there's a real life megalodon way out there
there's not a real life megalodon, but there's sharks out
real
there.
life great white that is like bigger than anybody could imagine.
Yes, there's definitely white sharks. I'm not one of these conspiracy theorists. It's crazy, but just from doing this and looking at the satellite stuff, and there is no doubt we have great white sharks, and somewhere out in the middle of the Atlantic that it would blow people's minds. I guarantee there's a dozen of them, 5,000 pounds or more.
Wow.
Guarantee it. Guarantee.
Is there a way that you could mount an expedition to fish for them?
Man. It would be really tough.
I mean, getting way out there, that's like a giant ship. Like that's not.
It would take a Carnival cruise ship to go out there and spend. I mean, you got to go out 300 miles and either drift or somehow get to the bottom and sit out there and chum with a dead whale. I mean, dragging a dead whale out would do it if you could get your hands on one of those and drag it out 200, 300 miles and sit on that.
I already know how your mind works because my mind works the same. You've already looked into, could we rent a Carnival cruise ship and where can I get my hand on a great whale, on a dead whale? I already know how you work. Like that's
it is, man. I want to, man, Frank Mundus is the king. He he was the first one to catch these things, but I really want to get one larger than his. And I guess that's just pride or ego, whatever you want to call it. But I'm a fisherman. I'm not a scientist. And, you always want to catch the big. I'm not killing them. I'm just putting satellite tags. But I would love to. He got one that was 3,400 pounds. And we got one on New Year's Eve about 6 years ago. And it was 16 foot, which are estimated around 3,000 pounds. And the video and the pictures are terrible. We didn't land it till 10 o'clock at night in the rain. And it was just me and two people, me and my buddy Mark and this girl Haley. And it was blackout. Like I got video and pictures of it, but it just not enough but I know how big it was. I mean, I put a tag in, it's got an acoustic tag, and we named it Lane Sign, and it's enormous, man. It was such a huge fish. We're outmanned that day, but, and I'm still just scratching the surface. You got to remember, I'm only fishing for these things 10 times, 12 times a winter because the weather here is so bad. If I could go out there every single day like we do in the summer, man, who knows what's out there. But there is something there because with the small ones, the average white shark we're catching is 9 to 11 feet long, which people are like, oh my gosh, it's a big shark. It's still a juvenile. It's a baby. It's not even an adult yet. So where are all these adults? Well, these adults are the majority of them are hanging out there in open ocean because their diet changes. When they're small, they're eating fish. When they're juvenile pups, they're eating fish. And then once they become adults, they change their diet to mammals, which is whales, dolphin, turtles. Our turtle population, they got to love that. That's blowing up with everybody saving the turtles. So that's been really beneficial for the tigers and the white sharks. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot out there that's unknown.
It's really interesting to go to the places, to the websites where you can look at the great white shark tracks of the tags. Yeah. Search is one of them. How would you see the tracks of the sharks that you're catching?
The app that all my sharks are on it's called Sharktivity. But I gotta be honest, they're not gonna lie. This is a compliment. These people are not they don't like publicity, major publicity. Like, I think Search is all about the media, where the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy in the state of Massachusetts, they want science, they want data. So I don't think they don't put the energy that Search does in. Like, they're more interested in getting that DNA and seeing where it came from, and let's do this and let's do that. And so it completely different. And I've worked with both now. So, it's just, they're night and day. And
either way, there is some data. I mean, even like if you could just watch one shark. I remember when OSearch published their first tag that they had, and you could go there and you could look at where it goes, and it went like, my family always vacationed in Debadoo in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Well, we've been surfing and fishing and swimming in that water forever, and there it goes right up the beach, up into the river. It comes back out, and it's like, whoa. That's Jaws right there. It came right where I was familiar with. And then you have others that come into the Keys, go right through Key West Harbor, all of these places. But then the interesting thing is, like, there's tremendous activity up and down the coast, but then it goes way out into the Atlantic. All of a sudden, like, and I'm sure, when I look at that as a fisherman, I'm like, well, somewhere along the line, the food changed. And they had to change. So I don't know if they came from the Atlantic in and then do all this activity or whatever. But I mean, hundreds and hundreds of miles there, and then goes all the way up to Nova Scotia, all the way down to, South Florida, way out into the Atlantic. I mean, like, that is just fascinating behavior. I don't care if you're a bird watcher or you're a fisherman or something, but when you have a something that you're interested in, and then it comes through your area at a certain time, and then by some technology or something, you can actually figure out where this thing is going, and it blows you away at the vast distances that this particular animal is covering. It's so fascinating.
It is. It's really fascinating, and we just had a couple of them go down to the Florida Keys, your neck of the woods, circled Key West, like went around Key West, goes to Pensacola, spends a month or two in Pensacola, and then comes out, swims back around Key West, takes the same track, and goes all the way to Nova Scotia. What? Are you kidding me?
I mean, what is that about?
That's absolutely wild. They're covering that much ground. That thing went from cold weather to hot weather to crystal clear to murky water. I mean, they are traveling. It's almost like they're too big for this earth. You know, they're
Yeah.
covering so much ground, so much water.
I mean,
You
to
know,
them,
only
like when you look at like a wolf, and like now they've tagged wolves and stuff like that, and you'll have a wolf that'll go from Washington State to Yellowstone National Park in about the time that you might drive there. I mean, like, because you would drive and spend the night and then go. That wolf just keeps going, and it's just going, 13 miles an hour from Washington State all the way into Montana, and it just boggles your mind. Like, how in the world can a creature go that far? But to the wolf, that's not very far, probably. I mean, that's like normal. So to the great white shark to go from Key West to Nova Scotia, that's just what we do. Like, that's,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, to us, it blows us away because like that's like a long airplane ride, like,
yeah, yeah.
but to the shark, that's like what they do. So we're going to need to wrap this up. I know you guys got other things to do, but Taylor, what do you think? You guys have any plans for future films, or is there something that happens out there that you haven't been able to capture that you're really trying to? Or are you interested in going out there this time of the year where Chip's super busy catching all these other sharks? Like, what's going on on the film front?
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit, and obviously, if the opportunity presents itself, we'll definitely have the camera on board. But Chip, he's mentioned several times he's trying to get the big one.
Mhm.
He's going after, what'd you say, Chip? Like 18 foot?
Yeah, I want to take down Mundus. I want to get, we've hooked some giants that we lost. And man, there's a few out there that just drive me crazy that I think about. So, yeah, I mean, a goal is I'd love to have an 18, 19 foot or something like that here. And if I could have Taylor on the boat for that, that'd be awesome. But you just never know when it's going to happen. It could happen in December, January, February, March. You never know. Or do I need another dead whale for that to happen? Or so yeah, that's definitely a goal.
Yeah. Well, man, so cool. And so the great white trips are probably severely limited, mostly by the weather. You're saying you're only getting out there maybe 10, 12 times on a really good year. But there's also many other opportunities to fish where you're fishing double days every day right now. So tell everybody how they could fish with you if they wanted to, or at least get on the schedule for the future.
Yeah, I mean, you just you give me a call and I'll let you know what my schedule is. Typically, this time of year, I'm booked about 2 months out. I get a cancellation every once in a while, and I can put you in, but usually 2 months. And man, from end of April all the way to Halloween, I think is a great time. I love fishing September and October. September, you finally start seeing a little bit of daylight where it's not so blazing hot, and then October. Gosh, man, October on the water here. We get these big bull redfish. There's still a couple of tarpon around. The big tiger sharks are inshore. Man, October is really, really hard to beat. I love October, but yeah, June, July, and August are always crazy. We catch, sharks we get a pretty big one every trip. I mean, whether it be most of my charters, they want a big shark. They want something huge. So we'll either get a bull, a tiger, hammer, lemon, something like that. But I also kind of size it for my customer. If I get a couple of frail people on, I can't put out the normal pot roast size bait because I don't want to tell them I don't want to fight this thing. I gotta pull the anchor and
you find them,
the
they
bag.
wind them.
I can't. There was one time last year I had Dr. Scoble and Megan Winton on the boat, and we had a film crew on the boat, and we hooked this. I think it was like an 11-footer, and Dr. Scoble's fighting. He's like, "Okay, Chip, I need a break," and I start fighting this thing. I'm getting exhausted, and by the time we get this thing to the boat, I give the rod back to the doctor, and I grab the leader, and I'm so tired I can't even pull up. I'm just whipped. And then I was thinking, this is why I don't fight these damn things. It's a lot of work. It's really tough.
Yeah, it is.
It's,
it is. There's no
it'll
doubt.
test you.
That's the saying that the Keys guides, especially when you pull up to a amberjack spot or something like that. It's like, I find them, you wind them. Like, don't be handing the rod to me. I've caught plenty of these things. It's all up to you. But that's so cool. So much fun. I would love to do this again, man. I mean, we didn't even scratch the surface of so much of the things that I wanted to talk about. But your enthusiasm is contagious, and it's so cool to I don't care if I talk to a guy that is so into bonefish or so into permit or whatever, but it's just being around somebody that is so interested and so obsessed with learning everything that they can possibly learn about that species and getting just slightly better every single day. And that's what I get from you. And man, that's the mark. That's the mark of somebody that's great at what they do is you, because there's honestly, the failure rate is way higher. I mean, especially when you factor in the weather. Like, the failure rate has to include days that you're ready to go, but the weather does not allow it. And that's the most frustrating failure, is like you didn't even get a chance. But that's a failure, right? But it's the person that can continue to do those, and then I just love the idea of just unlocking those mysteries that now it's like wide open. Like, you learned something that allowed you to now find these things consistently, and then your record keeping is fascinating and all of that. So, I mean, that anyone that's listening to this, whether you're interested in catching sharks or not, some people don't have any desire to catch a shark, but if you are searching for the bonefish or the permit or the tarpon or whatever, I mean, listen to what he's saying about the record keeping and what he's paying attention to and what he's writing down. And for the inshore fishermen, it would be the tide for certain, the wind, the sun, the time of the year, the temperature, the water temperature, the type of birds you're seeing, the cloud cover. All of those things are incredibly important. And I found it interesting to hear just like what you chose as your categories of the things that you're writing down, the clarity of the water, all of these different things, and the time of the year. And then if you do that long enough, man, you can probably make some correlations to, okay, well, tomorrow's the day. Like, everything's lined up and I know exactly where I'm going. And then when that all comes together and you forecasted this thing that you've never been to this spot, but you like forecast this because of all of this stuff that you put together, and you're like, man, I've never actually been there, but everything is pointing to that being the spot. And when that comes together, that is, dude, nothing, whether you catch them or you don't, but they show up, and you've put that together. That is like, to me, that's better than catching them. That's like, you've now been able to replicate it, and that's, catch them or not, now you can do it over and over and over again. That's so cool.
You said it, man. I really appreciate the kind words, but you said it. There was no better feeling. There was one time when we got skunked, and we got skunked, and we got skunked, and then I had Taylor and a guy come in town, and I said, you know what? We're going to go fish a place I've never fished before. We're going to go to this spot. My sharks have pinged there a couple of times. I want to go check it out. But it was like a shot in the dark, and we went, and that was the craziest day of my life. It was one of the craziest days of my life. That was the day we hooked 7 in one day, and it was a spot we'd never fished before, never been to. And it was like, it was wild, man. It was just one every hour we hooked up, and they were getting bigger through the day. But we call it the biggest one was the last one, and my guys were so exhausted. Taylor was on the boat for that one. In fact, I think that was the trip where Taylor got in the water too. And it was, and Tom, like you said, man, there's nothing, it's really cool to be on the water, but it's a whole nother animal to be somewhere where nobody's ever tried something, and then to hit a home run, man. I was walking on water that night coming in, and it's probably the highlight of my career. I mean, that was really cool, man. That was a lot of fun, because as many times as we get skunked when we think, there's so many times where I'm like, oh, we're going to get it today. Today we're going to get it. We go out there and we don't see a fin. We don't see anything. And the water isn't right. It's not always great. You get skunked sometimes. And that day we hooked 7 in a place we never fished before. Was like, oh my gosh. I feel like I could talk about that for an hour.
That's cool. Really cool. We'll talk about that on the next one. Taylor, I'm going to leave you with the last question. And that is, after hearing what these trips are like, and you're preparing to go out there, what do you take on the boat? Like, you might be out there all night. Like, that's how it sounds. You might be out there all night. It might be cold. It might be raining. Like, if I were going, I think I'd take a whole backpack full of stuff. Like, I'm going to have food. I'm going to have water. Like, Chip seems like he could go without food or water for like 6 days if there was a shark involved. But for everybody else, like, you need like a couple of extra sandwiches. You need, like, what all do you need? What do you take when you go out on one of these things? You could be out there for 3 hours and call it quits, or you could be out there for 30.
Well, the first thing I got to say to that is, like, Chip, it blows my mind every time. He brings about enough to keep a bird alive. I don't know how he does it. I think he's just like surviving off pure adrenaline. But when Chips first started inviting me out, I kind of overpacked, like, with food and camera gear too. Like, I was bringing everything but the kitchen sink. And then I kind of realized, like, after a while, I'm like, I'm bringing too much, you know? But to answer your question, yeah, you're right. I mean, you really don't know how long you're going to be out there. So you want to, like, pack for the long haul. Because you heard Chip talk about sometimes they're out there till midnight. If it's a big one, you know, fighting the shark till midnight. So you want to bring maybe an extra pair of clothes just in case if you get wet. Because it's cold, you know, and if you happen to get wet, it's not going to dry out anytime soon. So, and plenty of food. Water is really important. You got to stay hydrated. But yeah, you want to. It's better to need it, or I don't know. It's just better to bring what you need. You know.
Yeah, man, I can see it. I can already see it. Like,
I can't believe you didn't mention it. You didn't mention what I thought he was going to say. Let me tell you about Taylor. This is what a great guy this guy. When we're not catching a fish, when it's slow and nothing's happening and there's no birds, you look at the front and he's sitting. You know, we're waiting for a great white shark, the baddest fish from the ocean. He goes to the front and sits down and starts reading the Bible. How about that? How about them apples? Huh?
Nice. Yeah, he's preparing.
I mean,
after the first one he saw, he's like, okay, this is time well spent here.
He goes up there and starts taking notes, and you know, everybody on the boat is like on edge, and their head is on a swivel, and he goes up there and opens up his Bible. So he's which is always good to have on the boat, you know.
For sure.
Thinking right.
For sure.
You know, the ocean's always a quiet place, and it's always been a quiet place for me to go. I mean, a lot of times we'll be out there and we'll have conversations, but there'll be other times where there's times of silence, and those times of silence are actually good because we're listening to everything around us. We're listening to the waves, you know, crash against the boat, and we're listening to the wind scream between the lines. And, you know, it's just like sometimes silence is good, and it's a good place to go and think. But one thing's for sure, I think my favorite part about the whole experience is just watching Chip. It's so fun watching somebody, kind of like what you said, Tom. It's so fun watching somebody who loves what they do. It's not a job. It's a lifestyle. They're passionate about it. And, you know, when they invest that special part of them into something like that, it's really cool to just watch them do their thing. And I've learned a whole lot from Chip. Just not just about fishing and being an angler, but just like a lot of life stuff too. Like, you can apply a lot of this stuff to different areas of life, and it's really cool. It's been really cool getting to know him. He's a pretty amazing guy for sure.
I can see that. I hope to share a boat with you one day. That'd be amazing. But anyway,
Absolutely.
guys, this has been fantastic. One of my favorite ones thus far. I kind of expected it to be that way, and I'm glad I continued to pursue. Like Chip said, he's working every single day, and so if you do text him or call him to go out on a charter, be patient. He'll get back with you, but it might be like in October.
And man, thanks for having me on, Tom. Like I said, man, I watched you on TV for so long. Just recording all that stuff, and man, you put together some awesome shows. So
thank you.
You know, it's an honor to be sitting here talking to you and telling stories. So man,
Well,
thanks again. I think
let's do it again. Let's go make some stories. That would be amazing.
let's do it, man.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I want to come and see one of those great whites. I will burn up the night driving there if you and I don't have to catch it. I just want to see it. Like, I'll be the deckhand. I can drive the boat. I can do whatever. I'm good at that. I will bring more food than Taylor. I promise you that. But I just want to see one time in my life, and it sounds like you're the man. So, all right, we'll make that happen one of these days, I hope. But guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and go check them out on their videos, their films, and their social media. You will like it as much as I do, I think. All right, that's it. We'll see you next week.